All right, guys, so the doors have been completed on the right side. This is the first door I mounted. That one went on quite well. Basically, it mounted to the underside of the skin, so the fiberglass there. This one worked out okay. Not overly excited about it, and the reason for that is the original builder had sanded down the wood surface in here. So it was actually indented where the hinges were supposed to go, and because of that, it travels past the wing surface, which I don't think will be an issue, but you can see when it's open all the way, the wing's going to interfere with the door. So we may have to do some sanding here. But I don't think that door needs to open like super wide, because the way the wheel comes out, it turns like this, I believe. So anyways, it's done, but we may have to do some sanding on that side just to make it work. So, but that's done now on that side. Have started working on the other doors. So I used, let me show you here. I used Weld-On 16, which is used for acrylic. I actually did a test piece and glued two pieces together without any preparation, and just put the glue on there and stuck them together. No sanding, nothing, and this stuff it's permanent, never coming off. So there was no way to separate those two pieces. So that's what I used to put the glue the plastic onto the plastic. I did prep it and sand it, and now we are ready to put the hinges on there. And what I did was I marked the original hinge location from the other doors, so just so I know where to actually put the hinges. So that's kind of the next step. Still working on gear doors, but making some progress. All right, guys, rudder linkage has been installed and finished. It's fairly straightforward to put on. The only real pain in the butt was actually doing up the nut. It's kind of my 7mm wrench worked, but it didn't work so good. So I ended up just using needle nose pliers, but kind of just getting the right spot for it. I found horizontal like that, and it was fairly easy to grab. The main tube here just pushes out of the way. So anyways, rudder's done and set up. My control rods that I had were too long because these aren't the stock control rods. So they were about this long. I just cut them with my cutters. So right now it's still too long, but it'll give me enough to play with it and get it set up properly. So that part's done. Also last night what I did was these bushings needed to be installed, the elevator bushings, and those go on just so the force when the elevator is moving is not all on the pivots, it's on the bushing from this pivot point. So anyways, those are done. I used high sol last night, so they're all fully cured. Next thing I'm going to do is get the get the surfaces set up on the tail here, and then I can put the piece back on the tail. There's a light that needs to go on the tail, but yeah, so I think that's the next thing in line. And still kind of working on the gear doors. Got all those glued yesterday. The high sol was curing, so those are cured now on the actual doors themselves. So we can start to work on getting those put on the wing itself or the gear itself. So a couple things happening right now, but that's what's happening, and progress continues. All right, guys, rear surfaces are getting closer to being completed. The control rods are done. This section's all finished. Just waiting to complete the front section with mounting it on the servos and everything before I put it in here. Insert these sections. This will be the last piece, just because it's easier to work with the front section while those rods are loose. So these rods, again, were not the stock rods. So there's, I think the stock rods are threaded on both ends, but what we had to do was solder on these ends with the ball, and that's going to be mounted to the servo. So that servo is already installed. I believe the original builder was going to use that as the throttle servo, but the two outside servos are the elevator servos, so we're going to do that, and we're probably going to mount the throttle servo up here. So anyways, this servo is installed already. We're going to put the other one in, get these all set up. So control rod distance, the manual states is 11 millimeters. So the small JR control rods, or I guess the standard four-star one, the smaller arms are exactly 11 millimeters. So that's already done. You have to drill the holes out obviously a little bit. Now I'm not sure which side center is better, so I got to check that first. Little note, obviously, when you plug the servo in and it's at neutral, with these four-sided horns or even a two-sided horn, one of the sides may sit a little bit crooked like that. Hopefully the camera picks that up. Maybe I'll use something straight. So one side might sit a little bit crooked and the other direction might sit perfectly straight. So you want to make sure you plug your servo in and have everything centered when you check that. So I'll do that now, and we'll get these elevator servos all set up is the next goal. All right, so elevators are all done. Still need to put the cotter pins through there, but the surfaces are done. They're leveled. One thing to note is in the manual, the servo horn distance that they talk about is supposed to be 11 millimeters, which is what that small little horn is. And I ended up trying it on the longer side of that 4 servo horn, so out there, which is 12 millimeters, that wasn't long enough. So what I had to do, I don't know if I have any of the ones that I used, but you can see the ones that I used there. So they're the longer twin servo horn that comes with these 8231 servos. And basically we had to use the third hole out, which is 14 millimeters. There's still one more hole out, but that's the distance we had to use to get the right travel. And then also because of that, I had to do a little bit of sanding on both sides right in this area because the servo horn wouldn't clear the sidewall there. So just something to note on this kit. But basically both of the elevators are done. They're both set up. And the high rates on this airplane in the manual call for 30 millimeters of elevator travel, and with that position, the 14 millimeter out from the center position, we get 30 mils of travel. So that's all set up. One thing I like to do, guys, too, is I like to get my surfaces kind of matched up and everything while I'm at this stage, right? So obviously you're plugging in the servo into the receiver, getting it centered, and then I'm just adjusting travel as well too. So I go to the limits, make sure that the servo travel is the same and adjust it at this point. Just something I do. I don't know if it's, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's just my way of doing things, and I find it saves on the setup later on when your plane's all together and you're trying to match surfaces. If it's done at this point, it's easier. So anyways, putting those cotter pins in, and elevators are done. All right, working on the rudder setup now. I believe, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think this was painted by the previous builder. So this is the rudder assembly. What I've done is I have taken the strut assembly off, and this is the spring that's inside there. So with all your force, it was almost impossible to even get this thing to squish. So you can see why, because the spring is it's just a piece of garbage, right? So I'm going to look through my spring bag that I have and see if I can find something else. Now we need to keep the length of this spring, just because it's if we cut the spring, it would sag, right? So we need to find a lighter spring for this. Also took this apart, Loctited it because it was just loose, and then when we put this piece back on will also Loctite that as well too. So I'll see what I can find for a spring. Also I'm going to put some lubricant in there just because you can see, you might not be able to see, but if you look inside there, it's actually like the metal on metal contact has rubbed the inside of this this strut. So anyways, I like to use this stuff. It's just basically spray grease and sticks in there very well. So I'll see what I can find for a replacement spring. Alright guys, so I think I found something that should work just perfect. This spring here, now it's got a lot more flex to it and fits in the little carrier properly right there. So that's good. The one downside with this spring is it's a little bit too short. So when we put it in there, there's just a little bit of play at the end, but the benefit is this actually moves. The other one, I could take it, push it against my chest, and you couldn't even get the thing to move. So a solution to that is we'll take the spring back out, and there's just a little bit of height difference there, but we don't need a whole lot of extra distance with this one. So what we'll do is we'll take this spring and we'll measure how long it is to begin with. So we're sitting at about 32 millimeters. And then we'll grab this spring, stretch it out a little bit. So I just grabbed it with 2 sets of pliers, pulled it apart, and now we're sitting at 36 millimeters. So we'll put that back in. And now, no play on the end, but it still has nice compression. So that's way better spring. There's going to be some squish on the back end of that. So what we're going to do now is we'll just put some spray grease inside here. Don't need tons, just enough to take the grip off. So that's done. Put a bit of Loctite on the threads. Assemble that back together. And now we should have, oh yeah, can actually move this thing. So previously that wouldn't even move. So way better. We actually have some nice spring tension in there, so that's good. Happy step. Put the clip back on. Oh, one little note for you guys is when you're putting seat clips back on, there is a flat side of a C-clip and then there's a rounded side of a C-clip. It's really, really hard to see, but the edges are just rounded on this side, and then on this side the edges are nice and square. Okay? When you put the C-clips on, you want the square edges facing out, and reason for that is it provides better grip against the shoulder of the pin. So when those square edges are sitting in the groove, it's just a little bit better hold than if the round edges were sitting in there. So if I look at this one, this is the one that I haven't taken off. The square edges are facing out. So Anyways, guys, that's a tail wheel assembly. So glad that all worked out, and yeah, should be perfect. All right, guys, thanks for tuning into this Corsair build so far. In the next video, we will continue with progress. The next step for us is going to be the rudder setup, tail wheel setup, and continuing probably with the gear doors on the main wing. So if this is your first time here, guys, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below, and also give this video a thumbs up. Additionally, if you're gonna hit that subscribe button, don't forget to hit the bell as well too. The bell helps you get notified when new videos are released on my channel. So thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.